The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and if this is the first session of Join Digital you're attending today, then welcome for the first time. It's great to have you here. And if you've already attended some of the earlier sessions today, then welcome back, and I hope you're finding the content at Join Digital useful and informative. Just a reminder that we have one more session after this one where Jim Kelly, our principal consultant, is going to be deconstructing next best action. So that's going to be a mixture of some machine learning and some marketing automation and how you can use that to optimize customer journeys at scale. That's going to begin in about an hour's time, so look out for the reminder email. I'm sure you've seen a few of those today, so there'll be another reminder email 10 minutes before that session. However, back to the session in hand now, which is entitled An Introduction to CDP-powered Email Marketing. Now, this is one that has gained a huge amount of interest in the past few weeks in the lead up to Join Digital. So great to have everyone on the session here. We speak to many organizations looking at customer data platforms to unify data, and the primary use case for a CDP is just that, to connect to data sources and systems across the business, ingest that data into one place, and then process that data and match customer records and attributes to create what we call the single customer view. And then to send those unified customer profiles, I guess, to whatever channels, CRM, BI tools, or business systems that need it. Email execution, however, and other channels for that matter, are not really something that CDPs commonly do. In fact, it's an important quality of a CDP in that a CDP should be agnostic to the channels you use, as opposed to, say, a suite or cloud offering. BlueVenn is a bit unique in the CDP world, though, I must say, in that it is both a certified real CDP by the CDP Institute, but it is also a real-time cross-channel marketing automation hub. And now, having released our new email marketing module in 2019, our system now therefore has the ability to unify all your data, but also unify your cross-channel campaign decisions and now execute email campaigns natively within the platform. This actually creates some new possibilities for your email marketing, and Matt Diamond, one of our leading consultants at BlueVenn, works extensively both with US and UK brands. So he is here today to talk about why CDP-powered email marketing is different and why it can enable you to become more responsive to the personalization needs that your customers demand, and perhaps in a way that your current data and email setup may not. So just a reminder, if you do have any questions, please post these into the questions part of the GoToWebinar technology we're currently using. We'll then read these out at the end for Matt to answer. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to hand the reins over to you, Matt. So over to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's session. Before we jump in, I'd really like to draw your attention to the poll that we're actually asking as part of today's session. And Anthony, are you able to launch that for me, please?
Sure. So that should be on screen now.
So,
okay, so I'm going to leave that up on screen for a moment, just while I wait for everyone to submit an answer. So please do click on the option on the screen that is most applicable to you. Just waiting to collect as many responses as possible before I close that down, and then I can show you some results. So we're at about 75% of everyone has voted so far. So if you haven't yet, please click.
I think it's worth saying at this point, Anthony, as well, that I'm posing this question really because I'd like everyone on the session today to help me illustrate one of the sort of key points that we're going to be touching on a little bit later on. And I think you'll see how that all comes together as we go through the session.
Okay, well, we're just about there. We've had about 95% of everyone voted, so I'm going to close it down and share some results. Okay, so as you can see on screen there, so the question was, how many email addresses do you personally have across your personal and working life? We've had 0% say one, unsurprisingly. 76% of everyone here today has admitted to having 2 to 3 emails. 18% have 4 to 5, and then there's 6% who have 5 or more. So yeah. I'm just going to hide those results. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So I think the next sort of place to start then is if we jump straight ahead into the session. I wanted to begin by briefly exploring the whole evolution of email. So at its core, email really is just a way to digitally send messages between devices, whether that's laptops, whether that's mobile phones, mobile phone to laptop, for example. But what really started off as essentially an academic experiment has grown to become one of the most popular methods of communication across all walks of life, as the poll we've just mentioned has shown. But it's the impact of email, and as well as a few other sort of technological advancements as well, that has fundamentally changed communications and therefore marketing into what we know it to be today. But from its roots in academia and computer science, email's gone through a number of ages to enable it to reach its current state. So starting with the sort of the spray and pray era, email's popularity really sort of came about in the early 90s. The internet was starting to find its way into more and more people's homes. Mobile phones were in sort of early iterations, and some could even access email at this point. And everyone was really leveraging email through the use of free email services. And it was this lack of cost and the lack of technical barriers to usage that led to email becoming so popular, as well as leading to this being the time of mass mailings that really used static lists in an approach that's essentially not dissimilar to that used in direct mail. I'm sure many of us on the session today will remember the days when we used to come home to find large amounts of junk mail that had come through our letterboxes on a daily basis because our name and our address and our contact details had found its way onto a marketing list or 5. So as time passed then, we move into the next sort of age around databases and some regulation. This is where legislation tightened as customers started to complain at the way email was really being used. And it was these complaints and the advent of regulation around the use of data that saw email marketers turning to databases to actually manage their lists. And as these became even bigger and more important, as email started to leverage behavioral data to really increase the relevance of email communications. And as mobile technology evolved as well, this was all about smartphones starting to come out, things like the original iPhone. And this really enabled email usage to pick up on mobile devices as well. So as this amount of data that was available on customers grew, then consequently the size of those marketing databases expanded as well. It was the ability to granularly segment all of that data that became an absolute requirement for email marketers. But as that volume of data increased, so did the trend towards customers having and using multiple email addresses. And it's this use of multiple identities in a single channel that introduced the need to be able to identify the individual person behind those multiple email addresses. And it was this need that really spawned a new type of solution, the customer data platform. And it's the ability for the CDP to provide that unified view of the customer and combine that with the ability to deliver email without the need for a dedicated email platform, as Anthony's already touched upon, that I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about today. But I wanted to really take the opportunity at the beginning of the session to share a few of the problems and the issues that I regularly hear when speaking to marketers who are trying to leverage email either on its own or as part of a multi-channel customer journey approach. Now, many of these have been becoming more and more prevalent as businesses are trying to centralize their data and their customer experience management. A lot of organizations are trying to do that within some of their existing MarTech tools that may not necessarily be most suited to managing those processes as well. So I hope as we go through the session today, you can see how CDP-powered email is actually going to help to resolve these issues that we have up on screen at the moment. So as we can see from our sort of glance over the history of email, the evolutionary pathway of email marketing systems has really led to a number of common challenges having to be faced by all businesses who leverage email in their marketing mix. And before we look further at the limitations and the challenges and the foundations of a traditional ESP and what they actually force marketers to overcome in their day-to-day activities, I really wanted to share something that sort of came to my mind as I was putting today's session together. So looking back over the conversations I've had with businesses, various sizes, different countries, different verticals, different industries, it really seems to me that the key to better email marketing, it's not about the creative necessarily or the technicalities of the sending engine. I mean, obviously these play a key part in actually the way the email looks and how it's delivered. But the real key thing that underpins all of this is actually data. How complete and how trustworthy data is has become so important, as it really helps us to inform sort of every facet of our engagement with our audience that we're talking to. So the importance of data is why I kind of wanted to start at this point by considering how data is structured and how each individual is identified in the context of a traditional email marketing system. But before we look at how we define a unique customer, I wanted to actually refer back to the poll that we asked at the beginning of the session. So, as Anthony's already said, 76% of us have sort of 2 or 3 email addresses that we use on a regular basis across our personal and professional lives. And it's that fact alone that exposes a fundamental limitation in the way data is really handled within email marketing tools. Many treat email addresses as a single unique identifier around which the rest of the data is all actually held and is pulled together. But as email addresses can be shared, or we all seem to have more than one in the case of everybody on the session today, this presents a major challenge around linking together those multiple email addresses and resolving that back to a single person. That's a real key challenge that needs to be overcome in the sort of the modern marketing world where everyone has all that multi-channel interconnectivity. So the way that data is structured and uniquely identified, it's not really anything that we need to consider here. There really is a ripple effect that magnifies as we get closer to the point of execution that we also need to be aware of. And it's that ripple effect of basing decisions, lists, audiences, and segmentation on an inaccurate data foundation that really does have a direct impact on all of our activities, from the relevance and timeliness of the communications right through to the overall customer experience that we're providing. And this is before we even start to look at the baseline performance metrics of all of our interactions. So really then, this lack of accuracy also impacts our ability to personalize communications as well, especially when we consider that most email-centric systems are not actually able to bring together data from lots of other solutions. When you're thinking about things such as CRM data, call center data, website data, even offline data as well from things like different point of sale systems. It's all about being able to bring all of that information together. And this is where these email-centric systems struggle. It's all about them not being able to provide that trustworthy cross-channel single view of the customer on all of the interactions that they've had with the business. So when we think about personalization in this context, what we can really achieve is inherently restricted either to what the email channel knows about the customer and manages all of that in silo, or it's limited based upon the data model and what we can actually shoehorn into that data model from our other operational systems. But I know, sort of speaking personally, this doesn't really inspire me with confidence when I'm thinking about delivering an outstanding level of engagement and customer experience. And especially when I actually want to be able to coordinate that across all of my online and offline channels. So I think after this webinar, I know we're all working from home at the moment, so if everyone's got a second screen next to you, when you have a chance, take a look at your email KPIs. Just think about the problems that you have with data and with personalization. How many hours do you and your team spend working on data in a manual way? Excuse me. How long is it taking you to get results from your agency if you've gone down that route for managing your data? Or if you're looking at your data and thinking, actually, I don't trust any of this data and what it's telling me at all. I just want you to spend a moment and then really think about sort of how more accurate data and the removal of those manual processes would really help when you're thinking about those KPIs and how it will help affect those. Or for those of you that really don't trust the data that you have, just take a moment to really think about what a world where you can trust data would look like for you as well. So understanding then how email-centric systems can really limit our ability to hit our overall customer experience goals, how have all of these issues that we've just spoken about, how have they actually been overcome up to now? So based upon the conversations I've had with many different marketing teams, one of the most common answers I get back is, it's all manual work in spreadsheets. And that's usually backed up with something from the CMO or the marketing manager, with reference to a number of hours per week that certain team members or the entire team as a whole take to create and manage different lists and campaign audiences. So realistically speaking then, many businesses are actually scaling their email channel through adding people and utilizing manual processes to be able to do more. But other organizations I speak to, they try to avoid this situation by going down that sort of full outsource route, so passing out all of the management of channels and data to different marketing agencies. But this brings its own problems as well. So the business gains the expertise it needs in email marketing and some of the other channels that they're looking to connect with as well. But it loses the knowledge of the data acquired through the use of that expertise. And often businesses lose the ability to react quickly to changing market conditions and situations. But also they're inheriting a cost associated with every question, every query, every audience, or every campaign that they're looking to run. So overall, when I think about it, while a bespoke database that's been managed by an agency may have benefits in thinking things such as improving the relevance and the personalization of communications, the fact that the business will always rely on that agency is always going to be a factor to consider. That's the fact that the elephant in the room for me really is that a lot of these bespoke databases can be quite hard to maintain. And the experience and the conversations I've had, they can actually break fairly regularly as well. So where an agency relationship isn't really an option, or the business has some technical knowledge internally, I have seen some organizations employ ETL tools to extract data from one system, transform it and load it into another. And while this initially helps to, it's really more about sort of helping to move data around the business quickly. It really has a lot of inconsistencies in the data as well. And these inconsistencies can really be magnified even further when you're looking at different systems and you're having to sort of cater for the different nuances of the data models that they have and all of those different limitations that you actually have to work around within that as well. So if we think about this then, if the data model that's underpinning your current email solution isn't really able to cope with the needs of the data that you are looking to work with, and you're having to then scale all of your capabilities through manual work and then looking at all the problems that this is causing, working with an agency and then trying to maintain enough control isn't really delivering for you, then what sort of other options do you actually have when you're looking to work with all of your data to underpin all of your emails? So before I answer that question, at this point, I'm sure there are a number of you who are sitting here saying, well, this is great and all, but a lot of what Matt's saying isn't necessarily completely relevant for us. We've got marketing automation solution, we've got an engagement cloud, or we've got a cross-channel experience platform, already in the business. But I've actually got a question for you then in that case. Yeah, and that question is this: what's the heritage of those systems? And I say this as many of these systems have actually evolved from email tools. They've actually started life as a simple EST. And this is a really key thing, is even though these systems have retrofitted execution channels into their platforms, the addition of things like SMS or app push into these systems, while they still allow you to engage with your customers outside of the email channel, you still haven't fixed the fundamental problem, which is you're still working on a data model that's inherited from the world of email marketing as a whole. So in other words, this is something that's email-centric, not customer-centric when you're talking about the view of the data. So it's fair to say that many of these systems focus on allowing businesses to be present on multiple channels, but have a number of limitations when it comes to inaccuracy of data underpinning those channels and their capabilities. So in that case then, what is CDP-powered email and how is it different from what we've been discussing so far? So CDP-powered email really is all about leveraging the advanced data management capabilities of CDP, along with the enhanced segmentation and analytical capabilities that that data foundation enables. In practice, what this means is that marketers can really trust the data that they have access to. They're not limited by the ESP's data model as to what attributes and what fields can be used as part of an audience or for the personalization of the email creative. And this is allowing for the creation of reusable audiences rather than static lists. And if these audiences, because they're reusable and they're recalculating, they're aware of all of the behaviors that the customers have across all of the different channels and different operational systems. And it's this that's also providing the ability to actually manage enhanced levels of personalization. Take a moment to imagine a world where you can take any data point that you have within the organization from absolutely anywhere and combine that together with other data points to create any form of merge tag or dynamic content block that you require within your particular email creative. Just a simple example. But stepping outside of the email channel for a moment as well, how powerful would all of this data and all of these personalization capabilities be if you could truly align email and all of your other channels at scale and with the speed to react to the ever-changing nature of your customer and prospect bases? But also, because you have all of your data in one place for analysis, you have the ability to not only analyze the email channel alone and operate in silo, you have the ability to really understand how email activities are actually impacting other channels within the customer journey. And this is allowing you to really increase your depth of response analysis, allowing you to dig even deeper and become even more granular and targeted when you're talking about the iteration of the message and the overall customer experience. Now, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with Gartner's hub and spokes approach that they referenced in their paper titled Smart Hubs and Dumb Spokes. Now, in summary, for anyone that hasn't had a chance to have a look at this paper, this is an approach that's really designed to allow businesses to do a couple of things. The first of those is around being able to leverage existing investments and relationships that you have within the MarTech space, and Anthony's touched upon this earlier on in his introduction. But it's also about being able to leverage those investments while removing all of the sort of underlying data issues and the limitations that data models within email channels and other systems have. So this is all about helping to increase the accuracy of the data whilst also improving the cross-channel capabilities and removing all of the manual processes that a lot of businesses still use today. But one of the whole core tenets of the CDP, again, something Anthony's touched upon a little earlier, is about allowing businesses to leverage their choice of execution channels and vendors. But I suppose one of the key questions that came out for me as I was putting this presentation together as well, what if the CDP has built-in execution? How does that actually align with this sort of hub and spokes approach that Gartner is sort of publicizing? So thinking about this, in my mind, just because the CDP has built-in email capabilities, it's not suddenly done away with the whole email provider agnostic approach. If anything, adding built-in email it's presenting businesses and their users with another option when it comes to the email channel, rather than this is quite key. Rather than evidence that CDPs are trying to go down that sort of marketing cloud route of requiring businesses to buy everything from them, utilize all of their execution channel capabilities, and starting to push organizations into that sort of walled garden approach to MarTech as a whole. So in summary then, I think the key benefits of CDP-powered email marketing can be both quite striking and more nuanced, and that's really dependent upon the business, the business's vertical, their operational structure, and the whole sort of target market that you're operating in. But due to the flexible, the extensible data model of a CDP, there are none of those limitations, as we've already been talking about, around being able to only leverage a subset or a siloed set of data within your email marketing. It's all about the ability for the CDP to manage that data foundation in a customer-centric way that really underpins email, as well as all of your other channels as well. And this really means that cross-channel behavioral data can be more easily utilized to really coordinate the customer experience. So by being able to talk to the individual customer behind the email address, it becomes possible to start having not only a more relevant conversation, but to allow the persona of each customer associated to that email address to inform you how to engage and what message to use. I think a simple example of this for me is my personal email address. And all of its associated behaviors, they really expose my love of sport and of travel, whereas my work email address exposes the more professional sides of my interests, while exhibiting a little bit of crossover into those personal interests, particularly around the travel side of things. So while adventure travel may be something that's I only want to hear about on that sort of personal email address, the option of business travel and being able to maybe spend an afternoon or maybe even a day exploring a whole new city is just as valid a conversation for an organization to be having with me. But I want to hear about it through a different email address, so a different sort of contextual channel when we start to think about it in that way. So it's this ability then to really understand who the customer is, understand their preferences, and all of those preferences in relation to the channel, the different contact points and those different personas that allows CDP users and the use of CDP email to really utilize the data and tools within the CDP platform to conduct all of that sort of deeply granular segmentation and derive the insight from right across the organization, all of the different business systems, the different marketing channels, and use that to really inform the next stage of the customer journey. And it's the insight that's brought about by that granular segmentation that is also then able to use, can be utilized in the personalization strategy, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, we all know that the days are past of sort of broad brush personalization or personalization that's only relevant within one channel. CDPs and their data foundation really allow for the provision of individually relevant messages and highly personalized experiences, all completely attuned to the individual, and all of them are deployable in a coordinated way, not only across email, but across all of your other connected channels as well. And I think the final point to make here then is by centralizing all of these capabilities in a single platform with control of what for many businesses is the most popular and profitable marketing channel, the need to work across multiple interfaces is removed, and the overlap of functionality between a traditional ESP, where they've added in campaign management capabilities over time, and the central data, decision-making, and channel coordination point provided by CDP really is about enabling businesses to avoid that functionality overlap. And in many cases, I've seen this actually allow organizations to make better use of their MarTech budgets as well. So Anthony, I noticed that we've had a number of questions coming in and everything else. So did we want to take some time to take some of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, firstly, thanks, Matt. Really interesting. I think the key takeaway here is, this is really mostly about the breadth and depth of the data and that the CDP makes available for your email marketing, and moving away from those limitations of, say, a single channel data model. So, great. Yep, we do have some questions. Just give me a moment. I'm just going to bring those up. So, sorry, there's about 4 or 5. We've got a couple of minutes left, so we can probably fit 1 or 2 of them in. I'm just picking one here that is actually something I hear quite often. So now that the marketing clouds are talking about adding CDPs to their suite, will those fix our data problems in the way you're talking, or is there a reason why we couldn't look at a CDP from BlueVenn or another to address it now?
So, great question, I think. And I think the answer to that really depends upon how big the data problem is and what the downstream effects of the data problem are on your business. So to my mind, marketing cloud vendors have spent a lot of time talking about adding CDP-like qualities into their systems for quite a while now. But overall, the market's really waiting for these capabilities to not only emerge, but also be proven as well. So I'd actually, just thinking about this, I'd actually turn this question on its head and actually say, well, can you actually afford to wait for marketing clouds to develop the capabilities that you need? And if the answer to that is no, then definitely, I mean, a CDP, as Anthony said, is all about being able to connect with all of the existing MarTech you have. So being able to bring a CDP in and manage all of that data in one place is definitely something I'd be looking to investigate further.
Okay. There's a couple more questions. I've got one here. How does, I mean, there's two that are slightly similar, but I'll focus on this first one. How does CDP-powered email address deliverability concerns?
Okay then, and again, this is a really interesting one because I think deliverability is one of those things that, particularly with email, a lot of organisations tend to have a concern around. Keeping this sort of fairly top level then, I mean, deliverability really used to be all about, you know, the IP address and how that was used to actually send the email. And it was all about the management of that IP address's reputation. And you know, that used to really be dependent upon the ESP, you know, being able to actually speak to the ISP, you know, that's actually, you know, delivering that email. And they're the ones that are managing that filtering algorithm associated with the delivery of that email. And this was, like I say, was all linked back to the IP address and its reputation. But more recently, the domain of the sender is starting to become more and more important. What this really means then is that the brand equity that's associated with that domain, so how each organization is actually then, you know, linked to that domain, is starting to play a growing role in actually determining, you know, the deliverability of email. So like I said, without going into sort of the technical sort of deep dive details, a lot of all this is linked back to the sending practices of the business, and it's those practices that are linked to the quality of the data that's being, you know, used to underpin those email activities. So to answer the question more directly, well, CDP-powered email, it really is sort of taking into account all of those traditional deliverability factors. It's the rise of domain reputation in that sort of deliverability calculation, if you will, that really can be directly impacted by businesses who actually resolve the customer data issues that they have as well.
Okay. We do have two more questions. Unfortunately, we do have to close this session down. We're going to get back to them personally. So we've got questions for Adelina and Todd. So we will get back to you on those. We do have to close this down because we have to get ready for session 4, which is going to start in about half an hour. You know, so very sorry, but we will answer those. You know, thank you, Matt. You know, firstly, thank you to you. Secondly, thank you to the live audience. Thank you if you're watching this on demand as well. You often get forgotten. You know, as I said, we have one live session starting at 4:30 British time. I think that's 5:30 European time and 11:30 US Eastern time. So that's going to be, you know, deconstruction of next best action. Really excited for that one. Lots of machine learning and exciting aspirational things in that. You'll get a reminder 10 minutes before that one is to begin. And of course, this evening, the agenda for episode 2 goes live. So on bluevend.com/join later this evening, you're going to be able to check out 4 more great sessions for next week. So yeah, you know, that's it really. Thanks very much. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, or the evening, or the morning, wherever you're logging in from. Really thankful to everyone who's attended this session, really well attended. And as I say, hope to see you for the next live session and next week for episode 2 on April the 29th. So thank you and goodbye.